Batman's rogues gallery is easily the most vast and legendary in fiction. As recently parodied in the opening minutes of the Lego Batman movie, Gotham is swarming with obscure, often ridiculously themed costume villains, and when being handed the keys to hundreds of possibilities, different writers will choose different paths. Some have the ability to redefine a popular villain, or weave a rich tapestry of villainy into new creations, but sometimes, they dig deep and uncover a lost gem of a villain not seen in decades, plucking them from obscurity and breathing new life into the character. One such villain has become the highlight of Tom King's current Batman run, and is the topic of our inaugural episode of our Better Know a Bad Guy series, celebrating some of the more obscure villains in Batman history. This episode of BatFacts, we're diving deep into KiteMan. Hell yeah. First appearing in an 8-page story written by Batman creator Bill Finger, drawn by legendary artist Dick Spragg, and appearing in Batman number 133, KiteMan uses a variety of kites to drop bombs and gases onto rooftop partygoers. He even punches Batman square in the face while flying by on a kite. He's eventually foiled by Batman and Robin, beating KiteMan at his own game by utilizing their own dragon kite. He's put into Gotham Prison, as this was years before the introduction of Arkham Asylum in 1974, and his kite was hung as a souvenir in the Batcave alongside the ever-present Tyrannosaurus Rex, Giant Penny, and other prizes. KiteMan wouldn't make another appearance for 19 years, until 1979, when he was dusted off by comics legend, Wolverine creator, the recently departed Len Wein. The character received a triumphant, if not short-lived, return in Batman number 315, drawn by Irv Novick and Frank McLaughlin. This issue sees KiteMan donning a new modernized costume with a pink visor, and actually referencing his lengthy time away in Gotham Prison. Most of his flying is done on what looks like a hang glider as opposed to a kite. The story is entitled Danger on the Wing, and at 17 pages it more than doubles the page count of KiteMan's first appearance, and this issue also marks KiteMan's first ever cover appearance. Here, a villainous KiteMan shamelessly double-crosses a small crew of henchmen in an elaborate robbery of the Transatlantic Airways payroll using, you guessed it, kites. He's foiled by Batman masterfully piloting his own bat-shaped hang glider. While talking to Commissioner Gordon at the story's conclusion, Batman cryptically wonders aloud, "Why do some children never grow up?" It would be another 7 years before a new plot was hatched by KiteMan, this time running afoul of Hawkman and Hawkwoman as they host the 5th annual Festival of Flight, an aeronautics show where, along with other flight-themed attractions, the Golden Eagle, an archaeological treasure, is being displayed. The tale, entitled For the Benefit of Mr. Kite, is named after a song from the Beatles' 1967 Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album, the title of which was inspired by an antique circus poster belonging to John Lennon. With help from Zatanna, KiteMan is once again thwarted in his kite-themed robbery attempt, exclaiming "Rats!" as he crashes into a tree, but not before we learn a little more about this heretofore mystery man, his real name. Good grief. It's bad enough the guy's gimmick is kites, but now his name is Charlie Brown? After these 3 defeats, KiteMan tried his hand at being a decent, hard-working contributor to his community. Only his community was entirely for bad guys. Next popping up roughly 14 years later in a series of cameos as a citizen of Zandia, a supervillain safe haven island nation, in the pages of Young Justice by Peter David and Todd Knock. Evidently, kites are only one of Charles Brown's many talents, as he's first revealed to be living in Zandia when he's shown to be a part of their Olympic team, competing in an undisclosed event. About 2 years and 25 issues later, Chuck has his arm cut off by fellow citizen of Zandia going by the name of Meat Cleaver. Luckily, it's almost immediately regrown thanks to a magic voodoo potion dispensed by Jamaican crime lord the Baron Aqua Sin Gaz. Lastly, KiteMan does what he does best, kite-themed evil-doing, when he's seen keeping watch and reporting directly to Lady Zand, the founder and ruler of Zandia, when their nation is threatened by superheroes. KiteMan would return once more to Gotham City for a final brief cameo in Batman Gotham Knights number 33 before befalling a series of misfortunes. In 2003, what would have been KiteMan's second ever cover appearance was foiled by a barcode. Things again fell silent until 2005's Infinite Crisis, where we're privy to a rumor from none other than the Joker. He tells the king of the Royal Flush Gang that KiteMan refused to join an aggressively expanding society of supervillains and was subsequently thrown off of Wayne Tower without his kite by Deathstroke, presumably killing poor KiteMan off page. But alas, KiteMan would return one more time, proving that you can't believe everything you hear, especially when it comes from the Joker.
Is it the scars? You want to know how I got them?
Don't get too excited, though. We merely see the aftermath of KiteMan getting killed and Eaten by Bruno Mannheim in the pages of Weekly DC Super Crossover 52. KiteMan's sole television appearance was in 2008 in the cartoon series Batman the Brave and the Bold. The show's more lighthearted, kid-friendly approach was a perfect fit for some of Batman's more obscure and outlandish foes, and KiteMan was no exception, making his television debut in the show's second episode. He's seen in a flashback as an accessory to Plastic Man's origin here, also begging the question, how often does Batman fight people around giant vats of mystery chemicals? Later, in the show's second season, KiteMan would return, this time as the primary antagonist and foil to Plastic Man, and voiced by Reanimator actor Jeffrey Combs. This episode tells of a boy obsessed with Benjamin Franklin, who subsequently turns to a life of crime, and while he's never specifically named, that is a pretty familiar-looking shirt. Lastly, he is seen in the show's cold open as an audience member to Batman teaming up with comedian and roastmaster General Jeffrey Ross to escape an actual roast being perpetrated by a gang of supervillains. So would this be the fate of KiteMan? A few tussles with Batman, a few cameo appearances, and then being eaten? He never even had an entry in either edition of the DC Encyclopedia. Well, if you clicked on this video, chances are you know that the answer is no. The fate of KiteMan began to swoop upward with DC Rebirth. Written by Jeff Johns, DC Rebirth is a different sort of take on DC's now regular reset events, in that it posits that time is being altered by Watchmen's Dr. Manhattan. While also returning Wally West and Batcave mechanic Harold Allnut, Dr. Manhattan must have also meddled with Bruno Mannheim's digestive tract and returned Charles Brown to the land of the living. KiteMan would become a fixture of Gotham City thanks to writer Tom King, who took over the book after Rebirth following Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo's momentous run, marking his return with an apropos of nothing 7-panel, 1-page burglary in Batman number 6. The page went over huge, working as a gag to the uninitiated viewers and a great throwback to those in the know. It also debuted what would become KiteMan's ubiquitous Pokemon-esque catchphrase, KiteMan, hell yeah. When asked about KiteMan, King said his initial inspiration came from a source that's unsurprising, coming from the guy who began his run with Batman wondering about a good death. I'm a huge Frank Miller guy, and his Daredevil had Stiltman, who would just sort of appear over and over again. So it started out as something like that. I just wanted my own Stiltman, said King. As the character continued appearing, King began to think of KiteMan as Gotham's Sisyphus, the king from Greek mythology who was doomed to an eternity of futility, pushing a boulder up a mountain only to be crushed by it as it came back down. This was a time of renewed interest for obscure Batman villains from time gone by, but the opening sequence in 2016's The Lego Batman Movie had a who's who of classic Batman villains, and KiteMan was right there with them. Though his screen time was equal to about 8 seconds, it still yielded his own minifig release from Lego, complete with his hang glider accessory. He's included in this set, included alongside Batman, Magpie, Classic Calendar Man, and the Riddler. Speaking of the Riddler, back in the comics we come to learn that he may have had a hand in the creation of what has become everyone's favorite running joke in Tom King's epic, The War of Jokes and Riddles. War of Jokes and Riddles is a Year 2 story. Just as Year 2, Long Halloween, or Frank Miller's much-belied all-star Batman and Robin were all in some way follow-up stories to Year 1, War of Jokes and Riddles happens 1 year after the events of Scott Snyder's Zero Year, New 52's updated Batman origin story from 2013. Stories that are set this early in the timeline can present a few challenges in terms of stakes, in that audiences know all major characters will walk away relatively unscathed, but does give a writer an opportunity to tell a tale of an early, uncertain Batman, and relieves them of having to give as many as 4 Robins something to do. But the true star of Wojar isn't the unnerving laughless Joker or the increasingly unhinged Riddler. It's our boy Charles Brown. In a pair of War of Jokes and Riddles interludes, we're treated to the Ballad of KiteMan, an origin story, tracing Charles' start as an aerodynamics expert who had been brought in to work on the Jokermobile. Life as a henchman proves dangerous for poor Charlie, and as the war's opening salvos go off, the Riddler, the Joker, and even Batman use Charlie as a pawn to try to gain the upper hand. After a particularly vicious betrayal at the hands of the Riddler devastates Charlie, he does what any sensible dejected henchman would do when backed into a corner. He makes a costume, a catchphrase, and a supervillain alter ego. The War of Jokes and Riddles is full of analysis on what makes a joke, what makes a riddle, what makes them different, and examples of what could be both as a means of exploring the differences between the Joker and the Riddler despite having a similar goal. The Ballad of KiteMan forks off into an exploration of the joke character from the eyes of that running gag himself. While watching him take beatings, defeats, and humiliations over and over, we're privy to a conversation between Charles and his son. The younger Brown blindsides Charles with the sort of bluntness only afforded to a child, asking, "Dad, are you a joke?" KiteMan's answer is oddly affirming and inspiring metafiction. What makes comics great is that the things that make you laugh can suddenly be the things that make you cry. So I was like, what if we took seriously the idea of KiteMan? He's this guy who just can't win no matter what. I just love that there was a character who had that Charlie Brown personality running around Gotham, said Tom King. The Ballad of KiteMan interludes show that a character that you may have thought was just a silly joke may be a clever riddle all along, and that engaging storytelling, an empathetic origin, and some solid pathos can turn this into this, and this into this. So that's the history of KiteMan. What does the future hold? Well, I don't know about you, but during the climax of War of Jokes and Riddles, I thought he looked pretty good standing next to Batman. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this history of KiteMan, please tell a friend who likes Batman. Like, subscribe, and as always, support your local comic shop. We'll see you next time.
Here I always thought kites were late. Happy to change your mind, Craig. Who says I changed my mind?